The Chargers officially released Joey Bosa on Wednesday, and although injuries may have cost him a chance at the Hall of Fame, he will still be remembered as one of the franchise's best pass rushers of all time.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, the writing was on the wall, and now the chickens have officially come home to roost on Joey Bosa being released by the Chargers. It just was a move that made too much sense from a financial standpoint, and now it actually has happened. Now, we're also going to take a look at some of the bigger defensive free agents. In case they can't bring back Khalil Mack, there's a couple of options that they could look at there, and a pretty loaded cornerback group. A lot of options to like there.
Yeah, and a lot of people are talking about the offensive free agents, and that'll be a focus for the Chargers going into free agency. But there are a lot of defensive guys that make a ton of sense as well. But let's start with the biggest news of the day, which we thought was going to be DK Metcalf rumors, but ended up being the Chargers releasing Joey Bosa, which isn't a surprise. We all kind of, at least me and you had stayed pretty consistent during this offseason that there was just no way the Chargers were going to be able to bring back Joey Bosa at a $36+ million salary cap hit, really no matter what ended up happening with Khalil Mack. But we talked about it this week with the roster bonus coming up on the 3rd day of the new league year. There was just no way for them to try to hold on to him and see if a trade could work out or anything else without having to pay a player that probably wasn't going to be on the roster in 2025. And he leaves behind kind of a checkered legacy with the Chargers and someone who never really felt like he filled his full potential. I mean, that'll always kind of be the story of what Joey Bosa, what his legacy with the Chargers is. But it's crazy, man. Like, the last San Diego Charger, obviously we'll see what happens with Denzel Perryman, but Joey Bosa's been with the Chargers since he was drafted as a San Diego Charger. Obviously it means something to us as San Diego guys. Another part of it too is, man, like our first ever episode of Chargers Domination Live was about the Joey Bosa holdout. Like, wow. and Derek Togerson of NBC in San Diego and having his daughter say, sign the contract, Joey, at the very end of it. So it's crazy that his Chargers career has basically been our podcast career.
Yeah. But
as far as them making this move now, like you said, it financially didn't make sense to keep him on the roster. Now you free up $25+ million in salary cap space, giving the Chargers close to $90 million overall, which puts them in a good position going into the offseason. Now, there's other things that had to be done, but this was, like you said, the writing was on the wall. This had to happen, as unfortunate as an ending it might be for him.
Yeah, this is the not so nice part of the NFL, the business part, because I know Joe Ortiz went up there at the combine and said, hey, we want Joey Bosa to retire a Charger, but while also knowing that there's just no way that was going to happen. And so this was a move that we expected to happen, and I think it was something that all Charger fans after the fact are trying to appreciate a little bit what Joey Bosa has brought to the Chargers. And, hey, a lot of expectations coming in as a third overall pick in the first round. And, hey, you look at the numbers, he is second all-time in Chargers history in sacks behind Leslie O'Neal. That is it. It is a very, he is in rarefied air for sure. And even with me saying that, it still feels like he did not come close to realizing his potential, because when Joey Bosa was right, when Joey Bosa was healthy, he was absolutely one of the most disruptive defensive players in the NFL. The unfortunate part of that is it was just way too far and few between. Joey Bosa dealt with a unbelievable amount of injuries in his NFL career. Some very, very serious injuries, some very painful injuries. And I think, in the last year that he was with the Chargers, he did his absolute best to fight through those injuries, to be able to give his team everything that he possibly could, including a pay cut, to stay with the team. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. And the production wasn't there, and it did not meet the amount of money that he was going to make. So this was something that had to happen. And now the Chargers have to plan for life after Joey Bosa.
Yeah, and I think the hard thing is they weren't really ready to be in this spot, at least as it concerns losing Joey Bosa and potentially Khalil Mack. But yeah, I mean, Joey Bosa was one of the top defensive players in the NFL at his best, and it's the reason at one point he was made the highest paid defensive player in the NFL and had a record-setting edge rusher contract. But over the last 3 years, he never eclipsed 6.5 sacks. Like, that just was what it was. And even last year in playing 14 games, while trying to do it banged up, he only had 5 sacks, and it's just not like he would have to literally be putting up triple what he did last year to command the salary that he's going to have. And like I said at the beginning of the show, a true Hall of Fame type of talent. Like, you can't even really say he's a bust from a talent standpoint. He was as good as you thought that he was. He was just never able to stay on the field. And I mean, it ends up being 41 games that he missed over 9 seasons, and he only played in 16 plus games 3 times in those 9 years, and only 2 of those were full seasons before it ended up going to a 17-game season. So it was also a turbulent ride, right? Like, held out as a rookie. And still ended up winning Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Had the incident with the Philadelphia fans watching his brother play, had the incident in the Jaguars game where he's slamming his helmet and costing the team in that way. I know a lot of fans had issues, with the offsides penalties and all that, which comes with great pass rushers all the time, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's like everyone thinks of Sean Merriman as like the dude for the Chargers, and like he's like 8th on the list of Chargers career sack leaders, right? Like, Joey Bosa almost doubled the amount of sacks that Sean Merriman had, and a similarly, injured, never really kind of lived up to what he could have fully been, had a few very, very good seasons. But maybe with time we'll look back on Joey Bosa in a different light, and I hope that we do, because he was a really, really good player at one point. There was just no way to argue to bring him back at the number he was at. I mean, you look at it, and just to show you kind of how much injuries played an impact, his 17-game average for his career was 11.4 sacks. That's a Hall of Fame player. You do that for 10 plus years, potentially, right? You're getting over 100 sacks in your career. So injuries kind of robbed us of seeing what that true potential was. But now you have to look to the future, where the Chargers now have $90 million or about that in salary cap space.
Cha-ching.
And the big thing that kind of comes from this is just kind of putting even more importance on bringing Khalil Mack back. And I think it kind of begs the question, like, does this, change what's happening with Khalil Mack? Do the Chargers feel better about signing Khalil Mack back to the team when they make this move? Because we all know now, with only Tulu Tuipulotu and Bud Dupree as your edge rushers on the roster, bringing him back now is as important as ever.
Yeah, it's got to be at paramount level of importance, because if you don't get that done, then that edge room is looking really thin, and then alarm bells should be going off. The emergency sounds, the sirens should be going, and they are very, very loud if you are not able to bring back Khalil Mack. And it's because Khalil Mack, even at his age, is still incredibly important and very productive for the defense. And a great run defender, still a very, very powerful and disruptive pass rusher as well. Khalil Mack definitely has to get re-signed. And also, I think now with the extra money, the extra cap space, you can feel very confident that the Chargers have the money to be able to bring him back and to still be able to upgrade around and be able to spend money on addressing other holes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If you tried to run it back with Joey Bosa making $36 million and then sign Khalil Mack to 22 to $25 million, that really kind of hinders how much you could have a chance to improve the defense going into 2025 outside of the draft picks that you have. So, as important as ever now, bring Khalil Mack back. He is a well-rounded player. You don't really have the heir apparent to both of these guys in the building right now as highly as you can think of someone like a Tuli Tuipulotu. Bring him back. Go get, playing for the future now. Draft a guy that could potentially take over, but this team is not ready to lose Khalil Mack yet. And losing Bosa and Mack would be a really, really hard thing to overcome, I think, in this offseason. But there is a chance it happens. And the good news is there are some options out there, including Josh Sweat, who could be, shoot to the top of the list of guys the Chargers should sign if they lose both Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. So we're going to talk about him and our other favorite defensive free agents the Chargers could target and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, so I need to tell you guys about Chewy, and I know you've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics that they roll out nationwide. AutoShip is a game changer as well. I know I do this for my dog. So nice to not have to worry about going to the store to get my dog food. My dog has a very specific type of food, and I get it delivered the same time every 6 weeks in a giant bag, and I always get a really, really good price on it too, which I love, and I just don't ever have to think about it. But Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, and right now, you can save $20 off your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com and clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. All right, David. Well, let's talk about what we wanted to get into at some point before free agency begins, which is next Monday, and it's coming up very quickly. And that is the guys we'd like to see the Chargers target defensively. And I think with so much focus being on the offense, with how the season ended last year in the playoffs, with them just being so completely overmatched and having the defense be one of, if not the best defenses in the NFL last season, most of the focus has been on the offense. But the defense is losing a lot of players too, and well, potentially could be losing players too. But also, I think a lot of that defense was made up of guys that were on one-year deals that we're not sure what the outcome is going to be, including Khalil Mack, who wasn't on a one-year deal, was in the last year of his contract. Poona Ford, T.R. Tart, obviously Christian Fulton was a starter for you last year. He's heading to unrestricted free agency. Denzel Perriman as well. You had Elijah Molden in, one-year deal basically. So a lot has to be done on that side of the ball too. And I do think when you look at the free agency class, I want to start with the kind of big name that would be a target for sure if the Chargers were to lose Khalil Mack and would need kind of an instant starting level, above average kind of guy to feel good about their edge rusher situation. And that's Josh Sweat, who it doesn't, I think hurt in Chargers fans' minds, just came off of absolutely dominating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Probably should have been the Super Bowl MVP. 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 2 tackles for loss. Also, I think showed in that game too, because he also basically forced an interception as well, driving a tackle, Joe Thuney, into Patrick Mahomes to cause one of those interceptions. Showed that he had the ability to finish in the backfield, right? And the athleticism to chase down at Patrick Mahomes, which I thought was really good. PFF has the projection at $18 million over 3 years. That's something, especially if you need a starter, if you need a replacement, and a Joey Bosa kind of Khalil Mack, at least in that kind of stratosphere, the Josh Sweat is a guy that you could target.
Yeah, also like it from the age perspective too. He's going to be 28 years old, so that's something that you really like as far as if you want to get a guy that you can sign for multiple seasons. I also like the fact that he played on a really, really good defensive line, so he knows what that looks like, and he can bring that kind of expectation and that pedigree of being a Super Bowl champion to the Chargers, who are obviously trying to win a Super Bowl. And so when you look at Josh Sweat, he's got that size that you like, 6'5", 265, 270 pounds, depending on where he's playing at. 6 seasons of at least 6 sacks, including 8 sacks and 54 pressures in 2024. So coming off of a very strong year, and he has a pretty good pedigree, 43 sacks and 7 forced fumbles in his career. So I think, if you lose out on Khalil Mack and obviously, with Joey Bosa already departing, you could do a whole lot worse than bringing in a Josh Sweat who is younger and has that production that I feel like you can see and project that being able to provide throughout the length of the contract.
Yeah, and that's what you're hoping for, right? You're hoping that you can have someone that might even be able to kind of surpass what the contract is.
Yeah.
And I think at $18 million, you expect, because playing on a great defensive line can be a hindrance too, right? And something to kind of be a red flag, because it's like, how much did you benefit from all of the attention the rest of that loaded defensive line had on it? So I think that's part of it, but I do think that very solid tackler, very low missed tackle rate for most of his career, which I like a lot, because it's very easy to miss a lot of tackles as an edge rusher, but also 66 plus pressures in back-to-back seasons. The only guy that sniffed that last year for the Chargers was Khalil Mack, who had 52. And this dude's had over 66 over the last couple of years. And Pro Football Focus doesn't do half sacks. So according to them, he has 34 sacks over the last 3 years, including a 15 sack season. And basically, they give the sack to whoever really deserved the sack. Whoever was the one that created the pressure and was the one that kind of finished it, wouldn't have happened without him. So that is really, really impressive with that. It's still 25 and a half sacks over the last 3 seasons, which I think is nice. And you think that, hey, after being on that kind of heavily rotated line, if he had a bigger role, he could potentially put up even bigger numbers. But if the Chargers wanted to go cheaper, there is an option out there that I think makes a lot of sense. I did see, after we came up with there, saw it on the Pro Football Focus top 100 free agents going into this class. Daniel Popper also mentioned this guy as an option too, and I think I like it a lot as a bounce back candidate, which is what the Chargers specialized in last year.
Yeah.
Baron Browning, an edge rusher, very familiar with his game. He was a headache in the Chargers every time seemingly they played the Broncos in his time there. Ended up getting traded midway through last season because of what they had going on there with Nick Bonito emerging and Jonathan Cooper as well. This is a guy per PFF as far as why potentially take a chance on him, because he did have a down year last year. Baron Browning's 14.2% pressure rate over the 2022-2023 seasons ranked 24th among edge defenders. So this is not a Khalil Mack replacement. The projection's 1 year, $6 million. But this is, even if you bring Khalil Mack back and you have Tuipulotu, this is a guy that is young. He's only 26 years old, so he could potentially turn into something. And then you're either looking at a great comp pick, right, or someone that you want to be part of your future. And also, not just that, he can be at least a situational edge rusher and someone else to put in that room that wins with speed, which is something they don't really have.
Yeah, and I like having guys in your edge room that have different tools to use to get after the quarterback, and also to really kind of set up the tackles and make sure you have your matchups for what each tackle does and what they don't do very well as far as protecting the quarterback. So Baron Browning definitely has that speed element, 6'3", 240. He's got a little bit more wiggle. Definitely coming off of a down year, 58 overall grade here. And 378 snaps, he had 2 sacks and 25 pressures. So this would be somebody that you're buying low on, and also had a career high missed tackle rate in 2024 at 23.8%. However, his career mark is at 14.4. So we'll see if that's an anomaly. Hopefully that is, if this is somebody you're interested in. But yeah, this is not going to be the star of the show, but a guy that you can work in and definitely has potential to supersede what he has done so far in his career.
Yeah, buy low candidate for sure. And the next buy low candidate I'm going to talk about, because I think everyone can get, at least someone behind a 26-year-old Baron Browning, who's at least shown that he can do it at a really high level, 5+ sacks in 2022 and 2023, and also has played off-ball linebacker, which is what he came into the league at. So I'd like to see what Jesse Minter could do with that, right? Like how he'd move him around, how he would deploy him. And I'd also like to see that with the next one. I'm going to sound crazy because the Chargers do not have a great track record of doing this exact move. But what about a flyer on Bobby Wagner? The Chargers have 2 young linebackers in Deion Henley and Junior Colson. Junior Colson, to me, did not seem like he's someone that's ready to step into that full-time starter role and just feel exceptionally good about it. Bobby Wagner was low-key insanely good last season.
Yeah, he was.
His projection right now is 1 year, $5 million. He's going to be 35 years old. Add him to the unction, give him, Tony Jefferson, Khalil Mack to pair with all these young dudes. Obviously, someone that has a ton of experience.
Which both those guys need to get signed, by the way.
Yeah, no, exactly. Tony Jefferson, obviously, is someone. I think Mack gets done. Tony Jefferson, we'll see what happens, right? They already re-signed Elijah Molden. I'm hoping he's back in the mix. But the reason I like this is it's kind of, you don't have to put the pressure on Junior Colson to come in and beat that guy right now. And also, even though Bobby Wagner isn't going to have the speed that he used to have, wasn't terrible in coverage, but he was one of the best run defenders and pass rushers at the position last season. He had 26 pressures as a blitzer last year. The highest on the Chargers for an off-ball linebacker was Deion Henley with 14, right? Also was the 3rd highest graded run defender at the linebacker position. So if you're looking for someone to pair well with Deion Henley, that's an elite run stopper still at this time, and gives you kind of a blitzing option that you didn't have at the position last year between Denzel Perriman really and Deion Henley, I might be crazy, but you might be able to sign me up for an early day on Bobby Wagner.
I mean, hey, I was surprised when I looked at the numbers, but 89.9 overall grade in 2024? Yeah, he went crazy. 1,071 snaps, 129 tackles, and as you mentioned, 3 sacks and 26 pressures. A 91.0 pass rush grade and a 90 run defense grade. That's pretty much acing it across the board. So for him to come in and put that season together at age 34, I mean, how massive can the drop-off be for you not to take a flyer at $5 million? I just think that, honestly, it's something that I'm warming up to, especially if they move on from Denzel Perryman.
Yeah, and we can take the Takeo Spikes of yesteryear, right, and all the other aging linebackers they brought in. Who was the other
Thomas
one?
Davis.
Thomas Davis, another one. This is the one, though, that's actually going to work.
It's going to work out.
There's another spot that I think the Chargers will add in free agency, and that's a veteran corner to go with their 2 super young, super cheap starting corners, Dan Tarheeb and Cam Hart. And this might be a loaded class of cornerbacks with a lot of good options. So we're going to tell you about all of them on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. David, we want to get back into our defensive free agency here because we wanted to talk about that today with Joey Bosa, especially with him leaving, now what the Chargers need to do with free agency coming up. And not enough people talking about the defense. And don't worry, we saw the DK Metcalf news.
Yes, we did.
We know that there's a conversation we had, DK Metcalf or Devontae Adams, because we like both. Make sure you guys are back here for tomorrow's show so you can see that in the Locked On Chargers YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. And thanks for making us your first listen today, especially with big news like Joey Bosa getting released. To make sure, or if you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Draft, because I know that's what I'm listening to religiously right now, trying to get ready for the draft, trying to hear about some of the guys the Chargers could take at 22 and beyond on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez, who do a really, really good job. But David, this cornerback free agency class maybe isn't talked about enough. And I think that maybe there's no kind of top of the market star or, kind of headlining guy that could really move the needle as far as it being a really good class. But when I was looking at it, man, I mean, they're littered all over the top 100 of Pro Football Focus top 100 free agents. And I think there's a lot of different kinds of corner that you can get, which is really nice too. And I want to talk about one that I saw Daniel Popper bring up, and also a guy I think a lot of fans could get excited about because he had 6 interceptions last year. And that's Byron Murphy Jr., who just had a career year with the Vikings in a very zone-heavy but blitz-heavy, system that they have there under Brian Flores, where they had also one of the best defenses in the league, and he might have been the best corner on the team. Byron Murphy, I don't know if I would go 3 years, $17 million per season, which is what the cost says it's going to be right now. Maybe the numbers get inflated a little bit because of that 6 interception season. But this is what Daniel Popper had to say about him. I liked Murphy's feel and eyes in zone coverage. No defense played more zone coverage in 2024 than the Chargers, according to True Media. So Chargers need someone that can play zone coverage, and they also have someone in Byron Murphy that gives them a lot of flexibility. Over 300 snaps last year in the slot, over 600 snaps outside, and you're talking about pairing a guy who had 6 interceptions last year with Tarheeb Still, who had 4 interceptions last year, maybe creating one of the best ball-hawking corner duos in the entire league.
Well, and you know that Jesse Minter likes to take his defensive players, especially his secondary players, and move them around and really try to kind of play those matchups, try to keep these guys fresh, try to, put these guys in the best positions to go do what they do. And for Byron Murphy, I mean, that is apparently getting his hands on the football, because not only did he have 6 interceptions last year, which was tied for the most amongst all corners in the National Football League, he has 9 interceptions in the last 2 seasons. So it's not really just an anomaly. I mean, this guy has been able to get his hands on the football pretty consistently. So that's something that you really have to look at. And that might drive the price tag up because, hey, when you get interceptions, that changes the trajectory of a football game. I mean, it's just as simple as that.
Especially if you're able to Jackson what a number of interceptions can get for you, right? J.C. Jackson robbed the Chargers because of how many interceptions.
Yes, $82.5 million. I don't think that this contract will be anywhere close to that amount of money. And my God, don't even bring that name up when we're talking about these corners. Are you going to put me in a bad mood here? But no, Byron Murphy, definitely a guy that you can get pretty excited about. That's still pretty young. He's only 27 years old. So those ball skills, I think that would fit very nicely in the Chargers defense.
Yeah, a lot of these dudes are pretty young, even though they have a ton of experience. That'll be kind of the theme of what this segment is. And I think another guy that makes a lot of sense for the Chargers is DJ Reed, who's the PFF's sixth ranked free agent in their top 100 free agents. 3 years, $14 million is the projected deal. And I like that he's an outside corner, right? Versatility is great. But I think that when you have the versatility already in the slot with Tarheeb Still and Derwin James, I think you'd be willing to make the concession on someone as good as a DJ Reed, who only played 11 snaps in the slot last year. So you're getting an outside corner like you have in Cam Hart, someone that can hold that down on a full-time basis, giving you the flexibility to do what you need to do. And also, if someone like Cam Hart, who has had concussion issues, ends up missing time, you have two guys in Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart that you feel good about playing on the outside. So gives you a good corner on the outside and someone who's just been the model of consistency, right? Has never had a season where he's allowed over 500 yards or 2 touchdowns in 7 seasons. Never had it, right? Yeah. Been in the league 7 years, but still only 28 years old, right? And I think the nice thing is even though he was coming off of somewhat of a down season last year, he's been pretty good and still was pretty good last year. But he was a top 20 coverage grade defender at cornerback in 2023 and 2022 in zone coverage specifically. And we just told you the Chargers play the most zone coverage in the league. This is a guy, David, super solid, not a gigantic price tag, and I think would fit really well on the outside next to 2 really young corners.
I mean, one of the things that you said that really just spoke out and jumped out to me was the model of consistency part. According to PFF, 6 straight seasons with a PFF grade over 70. That right there is as consistent as it gets. And yeah, he's 28 years old. He's still very young. And I think at 3 years, $14 million per season, I would be absolutely all over that for DJ Reed.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just a really, really solid player. Biggest red flag is he kind of had an anomaly season as far as penalties went last year. 11 penalties committed last season, which obviously is a ton. But I think you could see that come back to the average next year, right? Everything's going to go back to the mean. But I do think what it does, though, because Byron Murphy is like Tarheeb Still in a lot of ways in the fact that he takes a lot of chances, which can backfire on him as well. DJ Reed isn't really that type of player. He's more of just going to raise your floor. Maybe he doesn't raise. I mean, I think he can raise the upside of your unit too, just as far as like having 3 dudes who can play all at the same time. But I think he really raises the floor of that unit, which I think is super valuable. And then when you're only paying, 2 5th-round picks to start for you, you have the money to go spend on someone like a DJ Reed.
Definitely.
But we know the Chargers love a deal, and we know the Chargers last year, one of their biggest things was betting on guys who were going to have bounce-back seasons maybe after a down year. And I don't think you could put that tag on anyone better than you could on Charvarius Ward, who is projected to get a 3-year, $14.5 million deal. That seems a little surprising after the year that he just had. I mean, I'm sure other teams will see how good he was in other years and also, factor in, hey, in that same, with the same team the 2 years before that, he played exceptionally well. Maybe it's just a down year as another guy who's 28 years old, not super old, and a cornerback, right? Not too many 32-year-old cornerbacks out there, so it's a shorter shelf life in general. But this would be betting on Jesse Minter to get this dude to bounce back because he ranked 9th in zone coverage in 2023, 11th in zone coverage in 2022. 2022-2023, this was one of the best corners in the league, and you have a chance to potentially have him come recoup some value with you and have Jesse Minter tell him, hey, look what I've done for these guys. I can get you paid again next offseason if you trust me and come to LA.
See, the message here is very simple for Charvarius Ward from Jesse Minter. It's, hey, I know that you had to suffer with Brandon Staley in San Francisco and see what happened when the Chargers fired him and then brought me in, and look what I did with that defense with mostly the same players.
Yeah.
I am the guy that can rebuild and reestablish you back in this league just like I did for Derwin James. So I feel like it's a very compelling pitch for Charvarius Ward. And yeah, I definitely feel like this is a guy that if put in the right situation and have the right coaching staff, he can get back to that really high level of football that he was playing just the 2 seasons prior to this one.
Yeah, one of the things I love about him is a career missed tackle rate of 5.2%. That number went up in 2024. But man, that is a number that you love to see, and especially with like a Asante Samuel Jr. David, we've seen the bottom end of it. To talk
Yeah.
about a missed tackle percentage of 5%, like that's going to do something for me all the time.
That's why I was in on him last year, and that's why I'm back in on him this year, because this guy is a great tackler.
And maybe it's not a 3-year deal. Maybe it's a 1-year deal. Maybe it's a 2-year deal or something like that. But I think that when you have two guys you feel pretty good about and two rookies, you could take an upside shot like this, right? While you draft a corner to develop this year. And obviously Joe Ortiz has all the faith from all Chargers fans to draft as many corners whenever and wherever that he wants to get them from. But I think that, hey, if you want to take an upside, because I mean, you get Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still, and you add the Charvarius Ward of 2023 or 2022. You're talking about a trio of corners you're feeling exceptionally good about. So I think it's up to the Chargers now to be like, hey, why was the drop-off happening? Was it a physical thing, or maybe he just doesn't have it anymore? And if it's not that, if it's more of a mental thing, if it's more of a schematic thing, man, that feels like a high upside chance that I would absolutely be willing to take. But those are just some of the ways the Chargers could improve a defense that was the number one scoring defense in the NFL last season. Another way to win: score way more points than your opponent, which is what we're going to be talking about on tomorrow's show when we talk about DK Metcalf officially requesting a trade from the Seahawks, and reports out there that the Chargers have been interested in them since last season. A lot to talk about there, but the big question will also be Devontae Adams or trading for DK Metcalf. So much to get into. To make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media. You can find the show on our Twitter at Locked On LAC, on our Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, as well as finding the show every day on my own personal Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David's at Dro Talk SD. You might want to hit us up there because we might be doing a little fan mail, free agent fan mail tomorrow too. And try to get some of your guys' questions in, just since we haven't really done that this week. So make sure you guys hit us up or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers question. But make sure you are back here tomorrow when we talk about the Chargers potentially trading for a big-time number one outside receiver in DK Metcalf. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.